Good evening, everyone. My name is Rich Clybourne. I'm the Executive Director of the Gundalo Company. I want to welcome you to the fifth installment of our 2021 Virtual Gundalo Gathering Series. I'm thrilled tonight to have our good friend Sam Reed with us. Sam is the president of the Wood Island Life Saving Station Association, and I know he's excited to present the documentary created by Jim White that we're going to be seeing this evening. The documentary, as you probably are aware, is about the acquisition of the Type SR surfboat, Mervyn F. Roberts. Hope I got that right, Sam?
You did. It was perfect. Perfect.
Awesome. And that surfboat is going to play a prominent role in the restoration activities that are going to take place out on Wood Island here very shortly, I believe. Before I start the video, I want to provide you with a couple of updates and some housekeeping items. First of all, we have two more of our virtual Gundalo gatherings scheduled. One next Thursday, which is going to be a presentation by Jerry Ann Bogus, who's the Executive Director of the New Hampshire Black Heritage Trail. So that's going to be a good one to tune into. And then the following week, the 13th of May, we're having a Paint Your Own Gundalo workshop with local artist Todd Bonita. So if you're interested in art and want to learn something, tune in for that one on the 13th.
That's fabulous.
Yeah. And additionally, on the 12th of May, which is the Wednesday, just the day before the workshop for Painting Your Gundalo, we're having our annual meeting. So we'd hope you would join us there. And we're going to go back over 2020. Not that we really want to go back over 2020, but because it's the annual meeting, we are going to go back over 2020 for that. Lastly, our sailing and camp season is fast approaching, and we have a number of activities and special sales that we're trying to get scheduled beyond our speaker and music series. We're planning for a much different sailing season and camp season than we had last year. And obviously, as things start to ease up a little bit, we're hoping to have more and more folks come out with us on the Gundalo. We're going to continue to follow our CDC state and local guidelines for COVID-19 protocols. So you can rest assured that we're doing everything we can to make sure people are safe and healthy there. And stay tuned to our website for the details about sailing season and including ways to purchase tickets.
Thank you very much, Rich. And it's wonderful to be with you and your members and your supporters and your board members. I know there's at least a few, and it's just a real joy to be invited to do this. I want to just quickly say, I'm going to assume some significant amount of knowledge with the people who are watching this regarding Wood Island Station. And that I know Gundalo has taken many trips out there. I've spoken on Gundalo and about the project. And if you don't know the project, please go take a look at the Wood Island webpage. It's got a lot of nice little short videos. And the broadest of brush, Wood Island Station is a gem. It's a pre-Coast Guard facility where brave men would live and row out to help mariners in distress. We're extremely lucky to have this facility in Kittery, and it's a pleasure to be involved in helping restore it. The town of Kittery owns the islands. The town of Kittery owns the building. Every time we make an improvement to it, it becomes the property of Kittery. So we are truly a charity of 501c3, and we have worked very closely with Jim White and Spruce Creek TV for the whole tour of duty. This is year 6 of restoration, but I'm going to tell you it's year 11, I'm losing track, 2009 for sure, of this project. So Jim has been shoulder to shoulder with us through thick and thin, and has been making incredible videos as donations to Wood Island. And his skill set is second to none, but his level of perfectionism, I'll give you an example you'll see in this movie, and I'm going to tee it up for us here. A short clip, I mean, maybe it's 30, 40 seconds, of a incredibly interesting cradle that we've had built. So the Mervyn Roberts is a 1930s boat, which we'll show you, but to be able to be operational at Wood Island, it needs to go up and down a marine railway. So literally train tracks. And this image to open up the movie shows you that ramp. It's not just a ramp, it has train tracks on it. So to travel on the train tracks, the boat needs a special cradle with train wheels. And believe it or not, we got the original plans for that from 1922, and that the Freight Rail Company up in central Maine in Waterville donated building this incredible cradle for us. It's all done. And Jim drove 2 hours to Waterville and 2 hours back to Kittery just to get about 30 seconds of video for the movie you're about to watch. So that just gives you some sense of how really lucky we are to have him in our community and to have him involved in this project. And if you don't know, Jim's involved in lots of other interesting projects too. So in short, great thanks to Jim White and Spruce Creek TV on behalf of the Wood Island Life Saving Station Association Board. We have been really lucky to work with him. Again, I'm Sam Reed. I'm the president of the charity. I will be happy to answer questions when we wrap up. But grab your popcorn, get your blanket and your beverage of choice, and enjoy. It's about 25 minutes long.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and push the play button, Sam. Just want to make people aware that in the past, we've had a little trouble with some of the videos with some lag in there. So hopefully that won't happen tonight. But if it is, just hang in there. We'll get through the video and we'll get to the Q&A session afterwards.
Thanks, Rich.
Yep, here we go.
There are plenty of great stories related to the restoration of the 1908 Wood Island Life Saving Station in Kittery Point, Maine. I'm going to tell you just one, but it's a really good one. I'm going to tell you about the acquisition of the Mervyn Roberts. For the last 5 years, work has been underway to bring back to life the pre-Coast Guard station on this little island on the coast where Maine and New Hampshire meet. Before the U.S. Coast Guard was created in 1915, there was the U.S. Life Saving Service. The Life Saving Service performed the same kind of search and rescue operations that the Coast Guard does today. Hundreds of lives were saved by the brave men from Wood Island Station. They were called surfmen, or storm warriors. This station building was very nearly lost from many years of neglect. It was in tough shape. But now it's better than new. The restoration is almost done. The plan is to wrap it up and finish the job in 2021. The finish line is so close. A charity, the Wood Island Life Saving Station Association, called WILSA, has taken on this project on behalf of the station's owner, the town of Kittery. The town couldn't afford to maintain their property and were making plans to demolish it. I'm the president of that charity, and my name is Sam Reed. Wood Island is soon to become a maritime museum open to the public. The museum will tell the story of the brave men that launched rowing boats called surf boats to help mariners in distress. It's a bit hard to imagine a group of men getting in rowboats, in storms, at night, in the winter, in Maine, but that's what they did all the time. And they risked their own lives doing it. It's an inspiring story of dedication to duty. Our charity is working hard to keep alive that extraordinary story in this special building. How did these men do this? Who were they? What wrecks happened? What was it like? And all of this will be explained at the new museum. We can't wait to share it all and teach others to pass it on for a long while to come. An opportunity to acquire an original surf boat from the late 1930s popped up this past fall, and WILSA jumped at the chance. These boats are exceptionally rare, crazy rare. What we didn't know when we started to look at this boat was how many pieces of this puzzle would come together so quickly. What kind of boat was this? Where was it built? Where had it been in service? What, if any, relevance did it have to Wood Island? Who would we meet along the way? How would we pay for it? How would we restore it? It was just like a big jigsaw puzzle or scavenger hunt. Acquiring the Mervyn Roberts was really special. It's taken the Wood Island Restoration Project a few huge steps forward towards reaching the goal of becoming a maritime museum. And that museum will be so unique. It will only be accessible by boat, for starters. There are only a dozen or so life-saving stations open to the public in the USA. None of them have a marine railway or a surf boat launching into the water. What we're soon to accomplish in Kittery will be a one-of-a-kind thing. Wood Island will be able to tell the story of the surfman so well with its own operational surf boat and marine railway. So pull up a seat and let me tell you about the acquisition of the Mervyn Roberts. I'll roll it out for you with the dates that things happened to show you how it all came together. In mid-September 2020, a WILSA board member, Buzz Bussey, saw an advertisement on Facebook offering to sell an old surf boat. He sent it along to me. Our first thought was that such a boat would be great to have to help us build a historic boat cradle. The boat on the cradle would help us work out the kinks on rebuilding the marine rail. You see, the surf boats at Wood Island were waiting in the station on special cradles that had train wheels to roll down the train track of the marine railway. When there was an emergency, they would be launched. I messaged to the seller saying Wood Island was interested in talking. September 21, I sent some photos of the boat from the Facebook ad to Tim Dring for his thoughts. Tim is a board member of the U.S. Life Saving Service Heritage Association, and he is the national expert on early Coast Guard vessels. He wrote a book called American Coastal Rescue Craft. That book is all about the history of the boats that the Life Saving Service and then later the Coast Guard have used over the years. He's compiled an extensive database of all the remaining early Coast Guard boats, and that list is not long. He said that it was a pulling surf boat, meaning it was a rowing boat that had an engine added later. It was not a motorized surf boat that had had an engine when new. September 30th, I talked to Dave Smith, the seller of the boat, for the first time. Dave said the boat was a monomoy type. He didn't know exactly how old it was, and it seemed as though he didn't really want to part with the boat. He said that the very first time he saw it at a wooden boat parade at Mystic Seaport, he had to have it. I asked him to donate the boat to WILSA, but there was no chance of that. He wanted to be paid. Frankly, we weren't making much progress, so just to keep things moving along, I asked what the boat's name was. He told me it was called the Mervyn Roberts. So I asked who that was. He explained that Mervyn had sold him the boat in 2006 and was a well-loved member of the southern Connecticut town Old Lyme, right where the Connecticut River meets Long Island Sound. That was where the boat was located. He said Mervyn was 98 years old but still doing well. It immediately struck me that the friends and family of Mervyn may want to pay for the boat as a way to honor him. I threw that idea out, and Dave said it might work, but we should check with Mervyn. Suddenly, we had a basic plan. But Dave had lost touch with Mervyn. He didn't know how to contact him. I said, leave that to me. In early October, I searched the internet and found an article about Mervyn. It was a big profile piece, and it was recent. He had been the chaplain of the Old Lyme Fire Department for 50 years and was clearly quite a character and someone that really was well-known and well-loved. I sent an email to the publisher, Olwen Logan, of the online newspaper Limeline. She emailed right back saying she would be happy to help make the connection, but didn't know how to contact Mervyn. But she knew people to ask, in particular Tim Griswold, the first selectman of Old Lyme. On October 22, after an email or two, I spoke with Tim Griswold by phone. Tim was protective of the boat, which he had known for years, and protective of Mervyn. After a series of hard questions, Tim was really happy about the plan taking shape. He said he would have Mervyn give me a call. He also said he would personally help raise the funding needed. Tim became absolutely critical to putting this plan in place. October 24, Mervyn called me as Tim had encouraged him to do, and he invited me to lunch at his home. He told me many stories of long trips in the open ocean as well as winning prizes at Mystic Seaport wooden boat shows. October 26, Tim Dring had been looking closely at photos and thought that the boat was a Type SR pulling surf boat. They were all made at the Coast Guard facility in Curtis Bay, south of Baltimore, Maryland. They were produced from 1937 to 1946. The Coast Guard was using much larger boats with engines by the late 1930s, but they continued to produce the old-style rowing boats for training and occasional rescue work. Tim thought 300 total had been made. He strongly encouraged me to buy the boat. October 31st, Jim White and I drove down from Kittery, Maine to Old Lyme, Connecticut to visit the Mervyn Roberts. Jim is a fantastic photographer, videographer. He's donated so many hours of valuable time to document the restoration of Wood Island. His videos are fantastic. Our thinking was that if we were going to meet someone who was 98 years old, we should record it. When we arrived, Nate Piper of the Strawberry Bank Boat Shop in Portsmouth, New Hampshire was waiting. He was there to put some experienced eyes on this boat before we made a decision. Tim Griswold welcomed us all. Dave Smith showed off the boat proudly. Tim Dring was on the phone, and Jim flew his drone. The boat was old for sure, but it was gorgeous. It would need some serious love, without a doubt, but it was obviously a boat that Wilsa should buy. The price was negotiated to $5,500. We said yes on the spot. Lunch at Mervyn's nearby home followed. His daughter, Edith Main, had cooked a lovely meal, and the video camera rolled while Mervyn told us stories about himself and of the boat's past. He said that a man named Ben Clarkson had owned the boat before him, but he didn't know where Ben was. Mervyn had taken ownership of the boat in 1998 when he was 77 years old. He had a lovely book of wooden boats with a fantastic photo of this boat being driven by an unknown person with a 1997 registration sticker on the bow. Mervyn told of his early career as a naval officer during World War II and his love for the sea and boats of all sorts. He talked about living in Old Lyme since 1960 and raising 6 kids there. He was warm, welcoming, and so happy to know that his namesake boat was going to Wood Island. He had prepared remarks to deliver to us, and we listened closely.
U.S. Coast Guard Surfboat Narrative, MFOR, Old Lyme, Connecticut, October 31st, 2020. Lee Steele and Mervyn Roberts were officers of the Trade Winds, a nonprofit school located in Old Saybrook and dedicated to small craft and the marine arts. There was a school for city children. Trade Winds was then run by Ben Clarkson of Old Lyme, who administered the operation. There came a time when the wages due to the teachers did not mesh with the timing of the income from the Connecticut State Grant, and so Steele and Roberts made up the shortage, each with a $2,500 loan to Trade Winds. However, the borrower couldn't repay, and so the lenders took possession of the Coast Guard surfboat to settle the loan. Eventually, Roberts brought out Steele, now deceased. He continued to operate it until 24 July 2006. Roberts sold the boat, by then named the Mervyn F. Roberts, to David L. Smith for $6,000. By the time this is written, Smith is negotiating with a museum named the Wood Island Station, Kittery Point, Maine, to acquire the boat for the facility dedicated to the lifeboat service, which is but a small part of the U.S. Coast Guard history. Although it's called a monomoy, it was built in a U.S. government boatyard in approximately the year 1920 as a rowing surf boat in Baltimore, Maryland. The boatyard was about 6 miles southeast of Baltimore, and it was known as Curtis Creek. So, thanks to Clarkson, Steele, and Roberts, the Mervyn F. Roberts now belongs to David L. Smith, who is negotiating the sale of aforementioned marine to the aforementioned Marine Museum. Of course, Roberts is the name on the boat and its intended purpose. He would contribute in cash an amount for the assurance that the boat remain in the museum on exhibit permanently, and that all the written and printed material that he's accumulated would be donated to the museum.
Mervyn also donated an artwork of a surfboat pictured for the Wood Island Museum. It showed a monomoy. He signed the back, and I promised to hang it proudly at the station. I called Tim Dring on the drive back to Maine, and he was focused on the lift hooks at bow and stern. He briefly thought it might be a B.B. McClellan-type surfboat from a Coast Guard cutter. November 6th. I did some searching on the internet and found someone that seemed to be the Ben Clarkson we were looking for. There was an address only in southern Massachusetts, no phone number. So I sent Ben a letter. I asked him to give me a call. November 8th. Tim Dring had reviewed the photos and measurements from the boat visit in detail and confirmed what he had thought earlier. It was a Type SR pulling surfboat with an engine added later. His personal database said only 5 of these boats remain in the USA, and this was the only one of those that still could go in the water. Wow, rare indeed. It was 25 feet 6 inches long, a little over 7 feet wide, and about 2,000 pounds. It had an 8-oarsman rowing en banc, meaning sitting next to each other with 1 oar each. A 9th man would have stood in the stern with a long oar to steer. It was clinker built, meaning that the strips of wood that made up the hull overlapped each other. The hull was cypress and the frame oak. November 13th, Ben Clarkson called. He told an amazing story of sailing along the coast of Maine in the early 1990s and seeing 3 old surfboats under a pine tree covered in pine needles at Friendship, Maine. He went to the house there, knocked on the door, and soon bought all 3. He took them back to the area where the Connecticut River meets Long Island Sound, as he had started a school for high school-age kids called the River School in Old Saybrook. Mervyn had been a board member of that school, and they named the boat after him as a surprise thank you for his hard work. Ben had been in the Coast Guard for 7 years, so he knew well what the boats were as soon as he saw them. The photo from the Wooden Boat magazine with the mystery driver was confirmed as Ben. Maybe the most critical information was that Ben said the sellers told him the boats came from the Burnt Island Life-Saving Station near Port Clyde, Maine, not far from Friendship. That station had closed in 1964. It seems likely the boats had just stayed in the local area since that time, but what had happened between the mid-1960s and the early 1990s was not known. During that time, the engine was added, but that was all that was clear. Mervyn had taken ownership of the Type SR boat in 1998, and soon thereafter, maybe 2000, the River School closed and the other 2 surfboats, they were a different type, went back to Maine to join the Outward-Bound Hurricane Island program. Amazingly, that program was set up on Burnt Island. More education for young people. Their webpage says, quote, "The point is you do things you don't even think is possible," unquote. That sure makes me think of restoring Wood Island Station. I called Tim Dring to give the update that the boat was from Burnt Island Station. This was huge information because it meant that the exact date of construction and delivery to Burnt Island was perhaps something that could be found. It might also be possible to find service records of the boat where it was used in rescues and training. I then called to Dave Smith to tell him this news and confirm that the payment for the boat had arrived. He was really excited and said that he remembered hearing some rumors of the boat coming from Burnt Island. November 15th. In early 2020, Tim Dring hired a consultant to go to the National Archives in College Park, Maryland, to scan copies of old Board of Survey reports from the late 1940s. Those reports were created when assets were being sold or destroyed. The Coast Guard had decided in 1948 to discontinue use of all old surfboats, so that time frame was rich with information about these boats being sold or let go. The materials from the consultant had not been finalized as the work had not been completed. The COVID pandemic had shut down the National Archives, so the project was put on hold. But Tim began to dig into the scans that had been collected to see if he could find some more about the Mervyn Roberts, and he found something else that was huge. A Type SR pulling surfboat had been at Wood Island Station. This exact kind of boat had used the Marine Railway at Wood Island. What had started as a boat that was a nice idea and helpful for finalizing the cradle and the Marine Railway was in fact historically accurate for Wood Island. The construction of the Type SR boat at Wood Island had been finished on April 16, 1937. It was delivered new to the Isles of Shoals station only a few miles from Wood Island. After 10 years of service there, on November 14, 1947, it was transferred to Wood Island. Wood Island itself was decommissioned in 1948, and that boat was then transferred to nearby Station Portsmouth Harbor in Newcastle, New Hampshire. It was taken out of service and declared surplus on June 30, 1950. It was sold September 14, 1951. It was not on Tim's list of one of the 5 surviving Type SR surfboats. November 19, Tim Dring found the cartoon of the Mervyn Roberts from 1943 at Burnt Island Station. November 24, the Mervyn Roberts returned to Maine for the first time in 30 years. She was delivered to Pan Am Railways in Waterville at their massive locomotive maintenance facility north of Augusta. The reason she went there was to help in the construction of the custom cradle that the railway was planning to build for Wilso. Having the boat on site would confirm that the cradle was perfect. Pan Am had already donated the train track needed for the marine rail. The rail they had given was from 1896, exactly the same size rail of what had been there when new. It was called 70-pound. November 25, Mervyn called me out of the blue and we had a really nice talk. I brought him up to speed on the many new developments. We both really enjoyed the cartoon that Tim had found, which I had emailed to Mervyn. He told me to hurry up and finish the Marine Railway, as he wanted to see it in operation himself. November 29, I located the owner of Burnt Island, and it was soon thereafter that we connected. He said that the boathouse at Burnt Island had had a huge fire in 1940, so it was a miracle that the Mervyn Roberts had survived that. He also said that a father and son team from Friendship, the Davis family, lived in the old station in the summers to be closer to their fishing grounds, and had been doing so for 45 years. They knew a lot about the station and its history. He also sent along many excellent photos of Burnt Island Station and its boathouse. Sadly, none of those photos showed the Type SR pulling surfboat. December 30th, Mervyn Roberts died at age 98. A huge funeral followed. As I mentioned, he had been the chaplain for the Old Lyme Fire Department for over 50 years, so the fire department transported his casket to the graveyard by fire truck, draped in black bunting, with a huge parade of fire trucks following behind. It is so nice to know that Mervyn was happy about his namesake vessel heading to Kittery. He had provided Wilsa one of the largest donations himself, only a few weeks before he died. So at this point, the cradle is under construction in Waterville using the historic cradle plans provided by Tim Dring. The Davis family in Friendship is searching for the people that sold the boat to Ben Clarkson. A group is forming in southern Maine to give the Mervyn Roberts some maintenance and a paint job through the winter and spring months. It seems clear she'll be returning to the all-white hull color that the Coast Guard used when the boat was in service. Tim Dring sent along the exact paint scheme that he had a record of somehow. Work continues to finalize the Marine Railway and Pier at Wood Island and have those two things completed in the summer of 2021. Tim Dring is poking around trying to figure out exactly which boat from his records was the Mervyn Roberts to confirm its exact date of construction, hull number, and service record. If all goes according to plan, which is naturally always a big if, by this fall the newly restored Mervyn Roberts will be tucked into Wood Island Station, ready to spend the winter happily inside the boat room on its special new cradle after traveling up the newly rebuilt Marine Railway. The restoration of Wood Island is all about remembering the brave local men from southern Maine and coastal New Hampshire that rowed out to save mariners in distress, usually in the worst weather possible. For the Mervyn Roberts to come along at the perfect time and have it turn out to be historically accurate for Wood Island was just outstanding. The group of people that quickly gathered to lend a hand is the really cool part of this story. From Jim White and Nate Piper to Pan Am Railways, Tim Griswold and Tim Dring, as well as Dave Smith, Ben Clarkson, the Davis family, Jeremy Winterstein, and of course Mervyn Roberts himself and his daughter Edith. Meeting all of these people, helping to bring them together, that's been the best part. To have been able to meet Mervyn and have him tell the story of the boat that honors him just before he died, that was unforgettable. The Wilsa board and all of our friends and supporters are doing what we can to give that lovely old boat a restored new home and a new mission, educating the next generation about the life-saving service and their dedication to the duty of helping others, even if it meant risking their own lives. We know these old buildings and old boats can be restored, even if they're in really bad shape. The men who lived and rode there may have come and gone, but having each new generation keep their story alive is certainly possible. It's meaningful, it's satisfying, and there's such a great message to take to heart. Helping others, even if it means risking your own life. That message is why this project is so special. It's why saving Wood Island Station is so important.
What was the most number of people you've had in the boat? Was it around 13 or so?
At least that number, yeah. It's quite buoyant.
No doubt. And how fast does the boat go?
I would guess that in Dead Sea conditions and no wind, it might make 9.5 knots. Actually, that engine that's in it now is an identical replacement for the one that I acquired the boat with, but that one finally wore itself out. And so this is a replacement engine.
Yes.
And it ought to be good for another 1,000 hours at least.
Well, I think we've taken a lot of your time, Mervyn. We are looking forward to giving this boat, many, many, many years to come of a happy life.
If you'd like to comment, drop an email to contact@woodislandlifesaving.org.
Hey, gosh, what a phenomenal documentary, Jim and Sam. Wonderful story. I know the expression goes, I think you can't make this stuff up. And just all the things, the facts that came out about the boat,
Yep.
just a tremendous little research project there. I think it's all wonderful. So what I'll do right now is I'll take a look in the chat section to see if we have any questions. And then, like I said, if I'm quick enough, I'll do my best to unmute people who want to ask a question.
Sure.
So there's only one question in the chat section right now, and it says, "What is the date of this photo?" I'm not sure which photo they're referring to. And it was from Christopher. If Christopher's still on, let me see if I can find Christopher.
The first
I'm not
one
seeing
shown,
him.
he's writing. Yeah, I
Oh,
think
the first one shown.
I think what he's referring to, Christopher, tell me if I've got this. When I was doing my introduction, there was an image on the screen. And that is very specific. I can't remember the exact date, but it's January 1909. And what's interesting about that picture, it's certainly the first picture taken of Wood Island because the building was built in 1908. The photographer was George Wasson. And if those of you who are in the Kittery, Portsmouth area, he became a well-known novelist and a really well-known painter. And believe it or not, we've got one or two Wasson paintings of shipwrecks and whaleback light, etc., that we look forward to displaying at the Maritime Museum. So it's a really cool picture with a whole bunch of meaning.
Okay, so no other questions have popped up here, but if someone wants to ask a question, if you would raise your hand. Oh, wait, I take it back. Dean Gallant has asked a question. Has it been determined what the lift hooks were for? Coast Guard cutter or ?
Yeah, I think they came with. I don't think they were as special as we thought briefly. They're big and beefy, and when they're building these things in the 1930s, they were a cookie cutter. So they were building, a lot of them for a lot of different purposes, including cutters. So when we say cutter, we mean, a big Coast Guard boat, and it would have davits, and the boat would be able to be lowered down. And that was I think what's so interesting about this story is we were really struggling to figure out what this boat was. So the sellers are telling us with total conviction that it's a quote unquote monomoy type, which is very similar to this boat, but it has its own parameters and its own purposes and history. And our expert was telling us it was a type SR, but he's so interested and so involved in this subject that he started to doubt himself. And so when we told him that there were lift hooks, he started thinking, well, hold on, maybe it's a slightly different hull that would have been at a cutter. And then he said, no, I think the fact that it's lift hooks was not super uncommon. It's possible that it's a type SR. So around and around we went. And, through this little documentary, you can hear, all sorts of different boat types came up, and that's kind of neat. But ultimately, we're confident it is what we've come to. And what's fascinating is 110 of them were built. We think, as I've described, Tim Dring has his own personal database of every boat that he knows about. And we think there's 6 of them remaining on the planet Earth. So that's pretty crazy. And of those 6, the others are in museums. So they're not ever planning to get wet again. So what we're talking about is pretty audacious. And honestly, we didn't really even think that we were going to do this for a while. So that, okay, it's not just that we have this old boat, we're actually going to restore it so that it can go in the water. And not only that, it's going to operate on a marine railway. There are no life-saving stations with marine railways. To have a boat like this on it is crazy unicorn type stuff. And I'll go one step further. Where we are, as you saw all those images, there's a great big hunkin' engine cover in the middle of the whole thing. Oh, here's a question from Christopher. Will it retain its engine? So it's probably not going to retain the engine that it came with, which is a regular gas engine called an Atomic 4. And one of the reasons for that is you don't want to be storing this boat with fuel in it in the historic building. That's just asking for trouble. So we've looked also at diesel engines. And diesel engines, we talk about that. We get excited about that. There's little Yanmars are beautiful. We talk about that. But we've more recently been focusing on electric power plants. So Wood Island has its own off-grid system. It has a little generator. It has some really nice solar-powered systems where we've got 6 big panels. They're doing about 2 kW a day. So they're really, really doing a good job. When you saw some images of the pier being built last summer, the pier had all kinds of electrical demands, tools, et cetera, pumps, concrete mixers. All the electricity for that whole pier project came from the solar panels, which was not really planned. It just worked out that way, and it was great. So in the case of the Mervyn Roberts, wouldn't it be great to get it back to full rowing capability? So the big engine cover is a pain because it's nice to have an engine in the boat, so you don't have to get 8 rowing friends and someone to steer just to take it out. So it would be nice to have power, but if you could get back to 4 bench seats and 8 oars, that would really be fantastic. And it looks possible. We're not sort of finished yet. We're comparing electric engine opportunities. And if anybody knows anything about marine electric engines, please, contact me. But that we think we're going to be able to get all the bench seats back in, so the full rowing functionality, and also have a power plant in it, which will happen to be electrically powered. And those electrons we expect to come from Wood Island solar panels. So that's pretty slick. I saw another question, something about tours.
Yes, from Nancy Brown McKinney. Will there be public tours of the island available in the future?
Most certainly in the future. Rich and I have been talking offline about how are we going to properly celebrate the first time Gundalo Piscataqua lands at Wood Island. And what I'm here to tell you, it's exciting times for us. The Mervyn Roberts obviously is the focus of this little movie. And it's nice to kind of remember the purpose of the restoration project is the boats and the brave men that took the boats out. So that's really why we talk about this all the time. The restoration, by God, we can talk about that all night long, but it is not really the meaning. The meaning is these brave men serving others. So that in the context of the timing of all this, We think the Mervyn Roberts restoration will be finished come August, give or take. So, stand by for that. And in as much as that the number thrown out was $5,000 for the purchase of the boat, we think the restoration is more like 50,000. So just to give you a sense of scale. And we are well down the road in raising that money, could always use help with that. But we're planning to finish that boat restoration this summer. So that is to say, the pier at Wood Island, deposits have been placed on the float, deposit has been placed on the gangway. The wood has all been located, which was actually quite hard to do. And we're now lining up carpentry laborers to actually do the build. So if anybody is familiar with a nice carpentry team in our area, we'd love to know about that, because we're having some trouble nailing that down. Good choice of words. But that our hope is to actually finish the pier by late June. So that is to say, we could be looking at Gundalow landing there late June, early July. Could be a little earlier, but it's that ballpark. And we're super confident about that. I mean, we've got the permits, we've got the materials, we're go, go, go. The Marine Railway will be the next piece, and that also we're very, very confident about. We're down into the gory details of talking to our friends at the railroad about how exactly you figure out the switch, because there are two sections that go into the building and they meet into one, and that is a little tricky, but we are very optimistic about that. So I'm hopeful that is done in August, and that means that as the Mervyn Roberts finishes her restoration, the Marine Railway is ready for her. Now that's a stretch, but that's our plan. And I don't think anyone's mentioned, we haven't really publicized it yet, but that the Maine Army National Guard has been our partner building those enormous seawalls. They are coming back in early August. So there'll be a smaller contingent than in previous years, but there'll be 20 men and women for 10 days. So that is to say, as we're all sort of geared up and all the materials are there and the carpenters are running around, those first 10 days of August will be really great, because if we need additional manpower, we'll have the National Guard there. And they are largely, master carpenters, electricians, plumbers, so it'll be great. So that's the general gist of it. All that being said, I mean, we're open for people coming to take a look at this. It's obviously an active construction site, so it's not really ready for active, tourism yet. But that we're welcoming anybody who wants to come to Wood Island. It's a public park. There's no charge to come to Wood Island. There will be a fee to come into the building and enjoy the museum. But in short, as soon as we can, we look forward to welcoming the public into the entire project.
Next question, another one from Dean. If you launch the boat down the Marine Railway, will there be civilian passengers? First part of the question. And then what happens? Presumably you want to get it back into the building.
Yeah, so it's funny. I talked to our insurance agent this morning. I haven't exactly mentioned to him, what we're talking about. What I was doing was putting the boat itself onto our liability policy. So the idea of usage and who's in it and all of those things, stand by. I don't know the answer. My expectation is we'll certainly all be having a lot of fun in it. That once the boat is in the water, and this is one of those sort of, classic policy questions, which is really more of a practical issue. Before it had an engine, so it didn't really have a big keel. It had a tiller, and that was about it. Once an engine was installed, it has a propeller, so the propeller is protected with a little keel, and that means what you see in some of those images where the boat is bow first, sort of whipping down the Marine Railway like a fireman coming down his pole. We made the brave decision to actually build the cradle the other way, so that the boat will land bow first and be launched stern first. Because if you don't do it that way, whatever the power plant is, the propeller is going to get damaged as it comes off. And it's a whole heck of a lot easier to land bow first. So that is all the plan. We'll have an electric winch up in the building pulling the cradle. And the boat, as I say, is just over 2,000 pounds. The cradle is, I think, 1,300 pounds. So it's a pretty significant winch. But that's the plan. And if you think about it, the boat room of Wood Island will certainly be a critical part of the museum. And you don't want a big cable coming through that. So what we're planning to do is put the winch in the basement and run it underneath the Marine Railway's first sort of 12 or 14 feet, which will be flat and level because this whole project is handicapped accessible, believe it or not. And so the cable pops out underneath the first sort of 12 feet as the Marine Railway starts to head downhill. So realistically, the boat won't go into the building every day. It will likely live its life sitting on that hill. And when there's a storm coming or when it's time to put it away for the fall, we'll have a capstan and a rope and pull it up into the building.
All right. Next question is from Andy. Were Piscataqua wherries ever involved with Wood Island?
I'm sure they were. What's funky is these larger boats had record keeping. So they were valuable. They were obviously mission critical. And the Coast Guard but before that, the US Life Saving Service kept detailed records. So when you talk about wherries and you talk about dories, these boats were certainly there. We have one or two images that came whipping by in the documentary that shows a dory with people in it, but there aren't detailed records about that as far as we know, because they were smaller scale. It's like owning a car versus owning a bicycle. And that in the context of Tim Dring, who keeps coming up in this story because he's so incredible, when we really got rolling with Wood Island's restoration, we were doing a lot of primary research. There's a lot of material about this in the National Archives in DC, as well as the National Archives regional facility in Waltham, Mass. So I had visited, other people had visited, and there's a lot of information. So it's very hard to make kind of conclusions. You see a snippet here and a snippet there. So we had information about these various boats that were at Wood Island. Well, how cool would it be to know about the whole history, every boat that was ever at Wood Island? And so I was moaning and groaning about this to Tim Dring at one point and saying, there's just going to be an incredible amount of research to figure out all the boats. And he said, what are you talking about? I've already done it. I've got the full comprehensive list. Here you go. So he handed us, so much research, including the list of all the boats. And as I say, that list did not include wherries, dories, and the smaller boats.
Okay. Question from, let's see here, Jim White. What was used to haul the boat in the early days?
Well, I think what you're referring to is most of these life-saving stations did not have marine railways. So they would have some way to get the boat from the building to the water. And most all of these life-saving stations, East Coast, West Coast, Great Lakes, were on shore, obviously, but not on a little island that's made out of rock. So they had sand out front. And that is to say, you've got to get this 2,000-pound boat into the water across sand. So they built these kooky cradles with huge wheels, like wagon wheels. And believe it or not, if a wreck happens 2 miles away, 3 miles away, you might see a flare, a distress flare. Someone has come into the station and saying, there's a ship that's run aground 2 miles down the beach, we've got to go. So they would pull out a team of horses and pull the rescue boat, the surf boat, on its carriage with wheels by horses and roll down the beach a couple miles to start dealing with the wreck. The exciting part is, most all of this is only going to happen in a storm. And so the boat in its cradle needs to be pushed into storm waters, horrible waves. And I'm thinking about North Carolina, New Jersey in particular, and Cape Cod for sure. And you got to get in this boat and somehow we got to push it out far enough to get it off the cradle. And then we're going to row it through the waves. So it was really a crazy thing. And that I think is what Jim's referring to, is Wood Island with its marine railway is very unique. Most of the other life-saving stations did not do that.
Okay, another question from Christopher, and he also had a suggestion for you for electric boats. So the
Great.
question is, so the boat didn't need any recalling or new planks? Question mark.
Oh, heavens, yes. If you'd like to go see, I'm happy to take anybody up to go visit the restoration. It's up in York, and it's not far away, and I've taken groups up there already. So if that's something of interest, let's all talk it through. The boat will have significant rebuilding going on. So the framework, so the ribs, the frame of the boat are largely rotten. So the good news is the keel, the stems, the body of the boat is not rotten, and there's actually less rot and more just worn. It's just coming up 100-year-old wooden boat, they just get worn. So the levels of paint, I'm here to tell you, there's probably an 1/8 of an inch of paint on the whole thing. I mean, it's held together by paint largely. So as we go through the boat, we're rebuilding it for another 100 years. So it's not just a patch job. I made it sound easy in the video. It's not easy, and it's expensive, and it's going to take months to do. And we've got Nate Greeley is shown in the video. Nate was really wonderful to, frankly, accept this project at short notice and had other things on his schedule and just took it right to the top of the list. And he specializes in these clinker built boats. So he's really perfect. And as you can imagine, the southern Maine, coastal New Hampshire, northern Massachusetts area has a very small number of master wooden boat builders. And needless to say, they all know each other, they all work together. And so there was a fairly significant amount of diplomacy needed to chit chat with all of them and make sure no one's feelings were hurt. And by the way, we've got this project, and who do you think would be the right person to do it? And anyway, the conclusions across the board were Nate Greeley, Nate Greeley, Nate Greeley. And we're really, really fortunate and lucky that he was thrilled at the opportunity. And I give you some example. Talking to Nate and saying, okay, we're gonna do this job. How do you like to work? Are we going to create a contract and a schedule? And do you want a deposit? And what's the plan? And he said, no, I'll shake your hand. And that's that. So we have obviously got a budget, but I was really impressed with that. So it is good New England values. You shake my hand, that's all I need to know, and that's all you need to know. And I'm going to get a fantastic work product. So we don't have what you would say is a scope of work. I mean, he's taken the boat apart and he's replacing what needs to be replaced. And I'd love to learn more if whoever was offering thoughts on electric power for that boat.
That was Christopher. So,
Yeah.
all right. And next question. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, we're deep into it. We're comparing a whole lot of different power plants. Yes, let's talk. And if anybody ever wants to reach me, it's really easy. The Wood Island webpage just has a contact button. So you just contact and poof, it's easy. But we'd really love some help there. Neither Nate nor myself have built a wooden boat using an electrical engine. So, there's many options. It is still in early days, in some respects, and in some other respects, electric engines have been used in boats for 100 years. So it's a weird mixture.
All right. Next question comes, another one from Andy. Does the bottom of the railway underwater need particular maintenance or frequent replacement? Question mark.
That's one of the subjects I spoke about with our insurance agent today. Because I mean, basically, you're putting a marine railway into a very harsh environment. And we did not make a video. Jim and I talked about making a video, but we didn't do it, of what happened last summer. So last summer, COVID, weird time, hard to raise money. We managed a really successful construction program anyway. And Pepperell Cove Marine turned out to be a fantastic partner. And we look forward to working with them again this coming summer. We have a fantastic marine engineer, a guy named Duncan Malore, who we've worked with, probably at least 10 years. I mean, at least, because the permitting of the Wood Island project had, huge expense, extremely complicated. Um, the federal permits, state permits, local permits, really hard to do. So that engineer was the key to that. What we did was we talked Pepperell Cove Marine into buying a special drill. So they didn't own it and they wanted to do work. They had a contract with the Navy Yard that didn't pan out. So they had some capacity to help us. And we talked them into buying this drill. The drill is like 4 feet long and it's donut shaped and it's diamond tipped and it can drill straight into ledge. And believe it or not, there's a particular kind of rock in Kittery. And so they knew all about that. So that drilled holes, and the holes are about 6 inches, but it didn't drill like when you use a drill in wood, all the wood comes out. This drilled down like a donut and left the center in place, and they'd snap it off with a big crowbar and you'd have this huge hole going down 4 feet into the ledge. And we put in those holes structural steel pipe that was about 7 feet long. And the structural steel, if you don't know, is like crazy, crazy grade steel. It's super, super strong. Put it into the hole and then fill that pipe with concrete. So that is 100% not moving out of the ledge with a big piece still sticking out. And on top of that, we put 12-inch structural steel pipe and filled that with concrete. So that, and that was scribed to the rock. So that the pier is made out of these massive 12-inch pipe. The end of the pier where you'll walk, so to speak, the decking of the pier is 19 feet above mean low water. So it's huge. It is 6 feet higher at the deck than the Pepperell Cove dock in Kittery Point. So it's the whole concept of resiliency and being ready for sea level rise. Those seawalls are 2.5 feet taller than was there historically. The pier is bigger. The whole thing is crazy strong. But that's not even the bad part. The Marine Railway has to live its life, underwater. And we have all these crazy strong pipes and the drilling in the rock and all that stuff's happened. So it's all ready to be finished out, but it's still going to be tough because we'll have timbers, very large pressure treated timbers, 12 by 12 by 10 feet long, bolted to these massive pieces of metal. There will be stringers on top of that for the train track to land on. The train track is attached to that with special metal clips. And there's sort of little teeny place to walk because you may well need to step into the boat. And that's pressure treated lumber, but that's just screwed in with 4-inch screws. So my point is, if anything's going to fail, it's going to be that lumber. And frankly, we're already planning on it failing. So even though it's brand new, we're talking to the insurance agent saying, how can we work it out so that when this thing gets trashed, 5 years from now, it'll be covered, the expense. So I'm totally on the same page with you. I think the structure will be fine, but I think some of the elements will go flying.
It must have been meet with your insurance agent day, Sam, because I did the same thing this morning.
That's funny. Well, I don't know why, but our policies renew in mid-May, so I knew it was coming.
Ours are August, but
There you go.
yeah. And one more question, which I can answer here, is will the documentary in this program be available to watch again? And yes, we are recording it. And
Sure.
Once we get finished and we get it downloaded, we'll upload it to our
Sure.
YouTube channel and it'll be
Super.
available there. And I know you mentioned that it's also going to be shown on some of the public access.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we haven't worked it out. We're just about to. Jim White is doing good work with Portsmouth, New Hampshire Television, with Kittery, Public Access, Channel 22. It's also available on the Wood Island webpage. So you got to look a little bit, but we have a couple of different documentaries and it's there. If you ever want to, just search YouTube. And YouTube, Wood Island, Mervyn Roberts will do the trick.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Sam and Jim, cannot thank you enough for allowing us to show this documentary. And I know I can tell from just the narration and when I've been talking to you how much this means to you and to Wood Island.
Yeah.
And so thank you again. We are excited about landing the Gundalow at Wood Island Pier, in June or July, hopefully, soon, so that we can start working with you all and getting folks out to see the Maritime Museum there. So thank you.
Great, and I'll throw one last plug out. If anybody would like to stay in touch with us, just send us to that contact button on the webpage, and we'll plug you into our judicious and irregular updates. We try to be respectful of people's ugly email inboxes.
All right, so I'm going to ask everyone to unmute and give you, Sam, and Jim a round of applause for a great evening. So thank you.
Great show.
All
Hi,
right, folks,
Joey. Hi, Carol.
don't forget about next Thursday night with the New Hampshire Black Heritage Trail, and then also painting your Gundalo 2 weeks from tonight. So hope to see you all in a couple of days. Thanks again, everyone. Take care. Have a good night.